Welcome back, everybody, to the Daily Sales Show, where we bring you daily sales advice to help you sell better. I'm your host, Adrian Saya, and today we are here to talk about how top sales reps share everything they know about high-converting outbound sequences. Now, I got my boy Tom Alamo here with me. Now, Tom, tell me, what do you think most reps are missing in their outbound sequencing?
I think high level, the number one thing most reps do is they rely on their sales sequencer to do all of the work for them. And they don't put the effort in oftentimes to personalize some of their messages. Sometimes they'll skip the call tasks, the manual tasks in order for the sequence to run by itself. And you might get some results with an automatic sequence in emails, but the gold is in the 10 to 20% that you can personalize, that you can put the effort into. So we'll get more into that today.
Definitely. We're going to drop all those nuggets, and I love to see you guys pouring in here. Let me know in the chat, where are you guys tuning in from? We usually worldwide, so I'd love to see some of these. Let me know where are you tuning in from, and also be sure to switch your chat to everyone. So click that blue button and switch it over to everyone, so that way we can see. All right, I'm seeing a couple people already in the chat here. We got Sydney from Chicago. Welcome, Sydney. Great city. We also got Judith from Canada. Welcome, Judith. Great to see you here. And Lauren from Toronto. Great to see you here as well. So, who's today's speaker? I've already introduced him, but this man is one of the best in sales. Tom here, he is from TA Sales. He is the founder of TA Sales and a very well-known person in the space. If you guys haven't given him a follow on LinkedIn, be sure to do so. Now, before we begin, if you're looking to level up in 2023, we can help you with our daily sales show. Yes, we do this daily, guys. So be sure to check out all the different topics. You can learn from hundreds of sales professionals. Just go ahead and scan that QR code or visit us at sellbetter.xyz. Now, we wouldn't be able to do this without our partners. So big shout out to Outreach. They are an incredible tool. If you're looking to reach out to people and really sequence things, we're here to learn about sequencing. You got to check out Outreach. Is a powerful tool. And the drop of the day is going to show you how you can create more pipeline very effectively and predictably with Outreach. So go ahead and click that link and see what they're all about. So before we get into the agenda, I want to hear from you all. How do you go about building your sequences? I have another special drop here in the chat. It is going to be our hotline link. So we're doing the Sell Better hotline, where we will create content for you. Yes, you get created content right at your email. And I'm going to give you a quick look at what this looks at. So what this looks like. So you answer the question, you're going to be prompted in video ask, and it's going to be saying, what is your favorite step in a sequence and why? Once you answer it through video, we're going to customize that for you and send it right back to you, so it'll be ready to post, and you can look like more of an influencer in your space and talking about what you know and love, which is sales. And that's why we're all here today. So be sure to check that out and answer it for me. Would love to see some of your answers. If they're really great, we're going to make sure to showcase them on our social media page and tag you. So be sure to check that out and get a special shout out from us and the Sell Better team. So what are we going to be covering today? We are going to be showing you all how to harness the benefits of sequencing to drive those sales success. Who belongs in your sequence? That's a huge one. And lastly, all the real world examples, so you guys know what to put in your sequence and where to put it. Now, as always, I'd love to know who is in the room. So we got a question for you guys here. Who is in the room? We're going to bring it up here. Let me know who is in the room. Now, I also want to know, Tom, when it comes to sequencing, one of the most important things that you mentioned is the 5x5 rule. Can you tell me more about this? What is it?
Yeah. So this is a way to stay consistent. Something that is a common hurdle when we're talking about sales sequences, if someone's new to it, is that they get really excited that you can get a bunch of emails out the door and calls out the door. And all of a sudden you add hundreds or maybe even thousands of prospects in there, and you find yourself with all these overdue tasks and you can't possibly get through all that work. So the 5x5 is something that's easy to remember. It means every week, if you were an account executive, you could put 5 new accounts and 5 prospects per account into your sequence. So that's 25 people that you would then be able to, reach out to, and you build on that week over week. Now, if you're an SDR, you might want to bump up those numbers. Perhaps it's 10 accounts and 3 to 5 contacts per account. Maybe it's 20. It might depend on your role. The intent is to find a number that you can achievably get to every week so that you don't have dozens of overdue tasks. The intent is you want to make sure that you can get through your whole sequence and find what that number is for you that you can commit to doing every single week. And that's the consistency that's going to help you build success.
I really like that. And especially how you mentioned that you got to adjust depending on your title, right? So I'm seeing here that there is about 38% SDRs in the room and 27% RAEs. Now, what's also interesting here is that we have 12% frontline managers and 13% senior leadership. So the senior leaders came out for this show. Now, as a manager, how do you implement this rule into your team?
Yeah, well, I think, I think one is coaching the reps on it. I think one is explaining the why behind it. So here's the why. That's a story that's not about sales, but it will relate to sales. There's a famous story that I love about these 2 teams that were expeditioners that tried to cross the North Pole, first team to cross the North Pole. And one team decided they were going to go based on the weather and based on how they felt, and that was going to determine how long they marched on any given day. The other team said, regardless of what happens externally, we're going to hit 20 miles every single day, right? And so if you guess who won that, that competition, it was team 2. Not only was it team 2, but team 1 actually died along the way. And the reason for that story is that consistency wins. So the way to get anything, if you're chopping down a tree, is like you want to do consistent strokes over time. It's not just flashes in a pan. It's not being occasionally great. It's being consistently good. So I think you want to explain to the reps the why. As a rep, I was always interested in why are we doing this? Not just following orders, blindly. So explain the why, and then coach them on, based on your whatever their territories are, tier your accounts into A, B, and C. Start with your A's and work through it. And then, block off time. I would suggest blocking off a couple hours every Monday. Things are a little bit lighter. You might not have as many prospect interactions typically. And so it's a good time to maybe batch, an hour or 2 where you can do a bunch of research and add the majority of your contacts in to start off the week.
I like how you said you want to batch them up. That really saves a lot of time instead of just doing one by one, right? I'm going to add this person, then go through a sequence. One person, go through a sequence. That just takes way too much time. But if you batch and go, you're able to get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time. So I would love to hear from our audience. What amount of people do you add to a sequence per day? Is it 25 people per day, 50? Maybe you're adding 100 people per day. Or is it something completely different? If so, let us know in the chat. I would love to see some of these. Now, Tom, one thing we talked about in the pre-call is the dangers of adding way too many people into a sequence. Now, why is that a problem, right? Because if I'm a rep, I'm thinking, all right, I want to add as many people as I want because it's good. I get to get my message out to the masses. But what are the dangers of this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let's just take a step back. When we're talking about a sales sequence, we mean that you are going to be reaching out to someone, multiple times over the course of, multiple days or weeks. So the purpose of that is most research says that the majority of people take 7 to 9 touches to book a meeting with a cold prospect. So if you're only sending 2 emails to someone, you're not really giving yourself a fair chance for them to see your message and respond accordingly, whether they're interested or not, right? So that's the point of trying to get a lot of touch points. Now, if you put, let's say, 5,000 people into your sequence at once, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either one, you're going to send all of those 5,000 people generic messages that have no personalization, probably no relevance. It's going to be a little bit of a blast, and you're not going to get a very good response rate off of that and might hurt your domain. Or you're going to be more thoughtful, but there's no way that you're going to be able to get through all 5,000 of those people when the tasks are due. And so you're not giving yourself a fair chance to appropriately reach out to them. So the reason why I start smaller is because I want to make sure not only can I put a personal touch on as many of these touch points as I can, but I want them to get the full 7, 10, 12 touch points that I planned, because there's a strategy behind that on hitting those people up that many times in a couple of weeks in a short period of time.
You know, you make a valid point there. You want to be able to actually make an impact with your sequence as opposed to just blasting out, a ton of emails. And a lot of people don't know this, but if you keep blasting out a lot of emails that don't get replied to or all end up in spam, your domain's going to take a serious hit. And if that happens, it is bad news. It just means everything you send from now on is probably going to be in spam, and it is no bueno. So we got to make sure that we avoid this. And I'm actually seeing here from the question we just asked that the typical result was about 25 people per day, which I think is pretty fair. About 13% said 50 people per day. 3% of our audience do 100 people. And I saw someone here in the chat say that they add 400 to 500 people per day into their sequence. Now, that is wild. I don't know how you're going about that and maintaining it, but that's a lot of pipeline. And you got to make sure you make room for personalization. So make sure you got a good balance there, because it could be tough, really tough. Now, Tom, you also mentioned that you don't just make one sequence and add 25 people to it. You make a few, right? So you have 3 different sequences. Can you break these down for me? What are these?
Yep. So the first one is a cold outbound sequence, and I base this on the persona. So let's just talk about that for a minute, just so we're all on the same page. I sell, my business is sales training and coaching. So most of the time I'm selling to a VP of sales, maybe a head of sales enablement, maybe it's a frontline sales manager. Now, if I want to sell to those 3 people, I could sell to all 3, but they care about slightly different things. And so I actually have my sequences built out for each of those different individuals so that I can message them slightly differently. So the same goes if you're selling to, in security or to IT or HR or whatever it is. You want to draft, different templates for different types of folks. That's one. The second one, this was the number one way that I built pipeline at Gong when I was there for a couple of years, was taking customers that people that used to work at a customer account and now worked into my territory, right? So if Adrian worked at Sell Better and they were a customer, and then he just landed at a new account that's in my territory, boom, that's like, that's a bullseye right there. Because I already know Adrian knows me. He's used my product. He assumptively likes what my product and sees value. He may want to bring that into his new organization. It's way easier to book a meeting than going cold. And then the third is what I call a stovetop sequence. And the reason I call it a stovetop is, I'm Italian. And so what do we do on Sundays? As Italians, we make meat sauce, right? So we make the Sunday sauce, and you make it on the stovetop. You keep it warm. It cooks. It's low and slow for, all day long, especially in the winter. And so the reason I call it that is because we as, AEs that lose deals, SDRs who have people that tell them to call them back in 6 months, you have this long list of people that you may not be taking advantage of. You may not be utilizing properly. And so I have a slow moving campaign for those folks so that I stay top of mind with each and every one of them. And I know we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into these 3, but that's the thought process behind them all.
These are great. And I can see a lot of the value in doing 2 and 3. 1 will always get you results, obviously. Cold prospecting works, right? But the 2 and 3 are kind of like that warm touch on how to get past just that cold presence and go into a more warmer state of, hey, we've worked together before. Let's restart some conversations. So I really like this. Now, Tom, when it comes to number 2, which is former customers that have changed accounts, how do you go about actually identifying who's actually moved? Because I see Chase here in the chat has asked this exact question. How do you find these people?
Yeah, you know what? I saw that, and I'm going to see if I can if you want, I can pull up I do it in Sales Navigator. There are companies that do this. we're not doing free ads on here, but I think User Gems and Champify are two companies that do this. But I don't pay for those because I'm a one-person business. I use Sales Navigator. I'd be happy to show you really quickly, or I can just describe it verbally.
Sure. Actually, go ahead and you can share your screen here. Let me make sure it can be done. Go ahead and give that a try. Let's see what this looks like.
Okay, cool. You put me on the spot here, Chase, and I appreciate that. So this is my real sales nav, so don't steal my data or anything. But if you go into the homepage and you go into the lead filters, this is where I find the majority of my best leads. And so what I would do back at Gong is I would type in past company, and I would enter in a bunch of, case studies or my best customers. Let's just say Gong was my best customer, right? And now either, based on your territory, if you have a company list, you can upload that list to SalesNav. If you're based on things like geography or industry or company size, you can do that as well. But let's just say, my territory right now is Salesforce and Google, and we'll just leave it at that for now. So what this is showing me are people that used to work at Gong and now work at either Salesforce or Google. So I could go in here and I could even further, what I would probably do is one more thing is I'd probably go into job title or job function. And let's say I only wanted to hit up salespeople or sales leaders. So I could go in here, and if I was selling to AEs, I'm just making this example up on the spot, I could hit up David here and I could say, hey, David, it looks like you spent, some time at Gong in 2020 and 2021. Would love to hear about what you got going over at Salesforce. See if what I'm doing at TA Sales might be helpful to you over there too. And so I've got this list. It'll update every single week, and I can keep it's probably pretty low quantity, but very high quality. And so it's a really good way to kind of just keep in touch with folks and find new people every week that, might fit that criteria.
Wow, this is great. Guys, put a 1 in the chat if you're going to start doing this. This is a real gem to keep in mind. Put a 2 if you already do this, and it comes in handy. I know I've done this myself, and it is a great way, especially at the end of quarter, which we're approaching into, Q3, that it comes in handy because you're like, man, how do I scramble for these last minute sales? People that have already been your customers in the past are gold. So I'm seeing a lot of 1s and 2s in the chat. So a lot of people are going to start using this, a lot of 1s and some 2s that are saying, I do this, and it is fantastic in my flow. So I love to see this. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. I know it was on the spot there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So let's break down some of these sequences. Now, you mentioned that you like to do these cold prospecting moments, right? When it comes to the cold email, you had this breakdown of your actual sequence. Yeah. Why does this work?
Okay, let's talk about this. So you'll notice a few things about this sequence. This is, I believe, 13 or 14 touch points over 20 business days, so about 1 month. You'll notice there's emails, there's phone calls, there's LI, which stands for LinkedIn. There's a video email. And then the last piece on day 20 is I would move the sequences. So you have different touch points. Different touch points per day. And you'll see it actually kind of I come out pretty hot out of the gates, and I ease off over time. So I love to do the triple play on day 1, right? So I do a LinkedIn touch, I write an email, and then I make a phone call. And I do it in that order because LinkedIn is where I might find a little bit of research. When I add them, then I'm going to send the email. And then I can use whatever I write and whatever I find to make my call so that if Adrian answers, I can say, hey, I just shot you an email about X, Y, or Z. And then you'll see some of the different touch points as we kind of go down the line. Now, I will say this. I'm always experimenting, and I coach a lot of reps, AEs and BDRs, and it depends on your skill set and it depends on your industry. I posted this last week that I've got a BDR I work with. He booked 22 meetings in May, over 1 a day, and he booked every single one of them on the phone.
Wow.
He doesn't like email. He loves the phone. The industry is a little old school, so people pick up the phone. They don't check email that often, and he hammers it. I know people that do the reverse and spend, book 80% of their meetings on LinkedIn or on email or on video. So I would just base it off of what your skill set is, off of who your buyers are, some of like the data that you can see. But this is like a very This is like my tried and true, and then I'll update it from here based on like some of the data that I might see.
This is fantastic. Everyone, be sure to screenshot this. This is a very straightforward sequence structure, especially for that cold outbound. Now, I'm seeing people here in the chat are saying, this seems like a lot of phone calls. Could the prospect ever consider this to be a bit spammy? Tom, have you ever found that to be the case?
Yeah, so we've got in this, how many do we have? We've got, it looks like five calls over 4 weeks. So my rule of thumb is that I don't call someone more than probably two, on most weeks, two or three times in a given week. Again, we come out of the gates hot in the sequence. 3 of the 5 calls are in the first 5 days, and then we kind of wean off based on if we're not going to get any if we don't get traction by that point. But I'm not leaving a voicemail on every single one as well. And, the reason why I do, there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of calls, there's LinkedIn, is, you don't know where your buyers are going to be receptive. So some people want to, spend all day in email, and it's better to reach them that way. Some people answer their phone all the time, and like they'll give you 5 minutes to do your cold call pitch. Some people spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, like video, hate video. It's very individual, and you don't know what each prospect really wants until you try it. And so I would not say it's too many calls. I know people that they'll call someone dozens of times with no response. And I think if anything, reps tend to get, I think we're a little less aggressive than we need to be. Sometimes we wean off the gas a little bit, hit the brakes a little too early. I'd rather, push a little bit too hard, get the feedback that, hey, this was a little bit too many calls. Okay, then I'll take a step back. I think you're less likely to hear that. You're more likely to get no responses from people. And all you're trying to do is have a conversation and get to an answer, either a yes or a no. A maybe or no answer is the worst case scenario in a sequence.
Very true, especially when you're just left in a state of just suspense. You're like, all right, I see you opening my emails. You're probably listening to my calls, but no reply. That is the worst. It's dreadful. So guys, really keep in mind that better to get a response than no response at all. So if you think it's too many calls, well, unless they've told you this is way too many, keep calling, make those dials, because people don't make them enough. So it's worth investing in. Now, I would love to hear from our audience. What is the length of your sequences currently? Are they around 10 days, 20 days? Maybe you got a 30-day sequence, or is it something completely different? Let me know in the chat. Would love to see some of these. I saw Tom's here is 20 days. Have you found that to be the sweet spot, Tom?
I think that's the sweet spot. You'll see, I think in the second sequence is actually a little bit shorter. I think for someone that's completely cold, I like to give it that much time because I want to make sure I get double-digit touch points in, and I don't want them to all be in like a week or two. One, because it feels like a little bit too much. Also, if someone's like on vacation or something, you're like front loading all of your activity into a week where maybe they're not there or they're traveling. And I do want to, when I'm talking about days, I do mean business days. I'm just seeing good stuff in the chat. I just want to answer one thing I saw like from a few people in the chat, which is about, I said a bump email on one of those. So when you're in a sequencing tool, there's 2 ways that you can send an email. One is on a new thread. So imagine like new subject line, first email, or there's you reply to your own email. So there's time for each of those. And so when I say a bump email, I mean, I'm hitting a reply to my original email with the same subject line. And, part of my message might be, referring to something that I said in that other message. So I try to mix it up between, reply versus new thread.
All right. I like that a lot. Keep that in mind. Bump emails work extremely well if you use them strategically. Now, you had another sequence here that goes to those who have changed jobs, which you gave us the example of how you find that out. So why then you put them into this sequence, correct?
Yes. So I'll find them on Sales Navigator. I'll put them into this sequence. And again, it's a little bit shorter. And the reason for that is that it's a warmer message. So this person, if we've done our research right, the first, before I add them, they should know who my company is. They might not know me. They might know me if I sold them their last program, but they should know what my company does. And, if I put that in the subject line, in that example, I might say, past gong customer to Salesforce or something like that. I'm going to call out, what my reason for reaching out is. And if I'm not going to get a response in those first 6 to 8 touches with that familiarity, then it's probably not a good fit. And I'm not going to keep pursuing that, at least in that time. But this is, again, it's a lower quantity that's going to get in here, but a higher hit rate, much higher conversion rate than someone that's just straight cold.
This is great. And it's definitely because it's warm, right? You're able to really hit home with that personalization of, hey, I noticed that you used to be a customer of my company, and then move the conversation over to where they're at now and if they would be interested in checking out your tool. So definitely keep this in mind, guys. I'm seeing here with the question we asked recently, you guys make your sequences about 20 days long. About 44% of our audience said 20 days, 30% said 30 days, and 21% said 10 days. I saw a lot of people in the chat mentioning that their sweet spot is also around 14 days, which I can see working really well for a hyper-personalized sequence that really just keeps hitting it home. Now, let's get into these stovetop leads, right? So break this down for us. Why is it 1 and then 31?
Yeah. So again, as a reminder, these are people that if you're an account executive, you've already lost a deal with them. If you're a BDR and SDR, it's someone that said, hey, call me back in 6 months. I'm not interested right now. It's not a good time, yada, yada, yada. It's not a true sales opportunity, but you have had some sort of contact with them. So what I would do in that case, let's say I lose a deal, with Adrian, I'd say, hey man, it's all good. You went in another direction. I totally respect that. Do you mind if from time to time, as I come across some really good sales data, that I can send that your way just to keep you informed? And so what I'm doing is twofold. Number one is I am being valuable to Adrian, right? It's low commitment, not asking anything from you, but I'm trying to add value. So when I come out with these emails, I'm not pitching my services. I'm not asking for 30 minutes. I'm not asking what's changed. I'm not doing any of that. I am hopefully sharing something that is insightful for you that might help you in your job. And so when I was at Gong, I would take things from the Sell Better team. I would take other industry reports and podcasts and blogs, and I'd send them across and I'd say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. VP of Sales, I came across this awesome webinar from Sell Better. Adrian dropped some nuggets. I hope you find this helpful. And because I want, today might not be the time, 30 days from now might not be the right time, but whenever it is the right time for them to buy that thing that I'm selling and they're in the market, I want them to think about me. And so I feel that once a month is a fair enough cadence that I'm not going to make anyone mad. I'm not going to overdo it. I'm not going to spend too much of my own time. But I am they're going to be reminded of my name and of my company so that when it is the right time, we don't control timing. But so when it is, hopefully they think of me. Hopefully they only think about me and I'm the obvious decision, or at the very least, they'll entertain a conversation and we can, kind of go down that road together.
Okay. I like this. This is a very good point. And Monica actually mentioned, so if you do on day 31 and day 1 in the next month, it's technically 2 touches back to back. Well, Monica, you want to actually space them out within 30 days. So you're either going to do day 1 or day 31, right? You kind of feel out what works best with the current rapport you've built with this closed lost champion, right? Or closed lost person that you've spoken with. So just kind of feel it out. It's more of a feeling thing and how you will be reaching out, either 31st or the 1st.
Yeah, just to clarify that too. So what that visual meant was, let's just imagine it's not like the 1st of the month and the 31st of the month. It's actually imagine today is day 1. The next step is going to be 30 days from now, which would be day 31. That's July 14th or something. And then the next touch will be 30 days from then. So that's day 61. So it's always 30 days apart. And if I have a good article or something, I could send that to 100 different sales leaders, right? If I have a great thing from Sell Better, I can share that with everyone, right? I don't need to like highly personalize these messages. It takes almost no time. I'm already doing this research. And you'd be really surprised over time how many people come back to you and are like, oh man, I'm so glad you stayed in touch. Now's a better time for whatever reason. Let's hop on a call.
Let's break that down. So I know you had an example for us. This is something you would send in a stovetop sequence. Can you tell me more about this email?
Yeah. So I mentioned an SDR I'm working with, was killing it in May. So I put out a LinkedIn post about him, and it went kind of viral. And I just shared like the 6 things that he was doing. And so I figured this would be good to send out to some people. So you see, this is a 4-sentence email. Said, hey, this is an SDR. He went through my last boot camp that I did. Here's the link to it. Figured that there could be a thing or two that you might take away from it, right? I'm not asking for time from these guys. I'm not trying to book a meeting. But I sent this out to, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 people last week and got a handful of responses, actually booked 2 meetings off of this. And so I'll do this, again, like once a month. I'll find something, whether that I wrote it or someone else wrote it, and send it to someone. And, there's some real content in here. So if they read this, they could hopefully use those 6 things with their SDRs, and it might be helpful for them.
This is a great point. And Jessica mentioned here in the chat, I love how you're giving before you ask for anything. So is that something that you make pretty standard across your emails?
Yeah, I mean, so I think in general, I want to try to give before I receive. I think that's just like a general principle I try to live by, especially in sales. In this case, if it's cold email, I'm not shy about asking for, are they open to a conversation? Do they want to, hop on a call, something like that? In this case, my strategy is just a little bit different because I've already talked to them. They've already hit me with a no. And so if every month I'm asking them for a 30-minute meeting, just feels a little exhausting to me. I might mix it in from time to time, but my thought is, hey, if they can see Tom as someone that just wants to be helpful, I'm helping to show them like, hey, this is how I operate. I'm in this for you. And that makes you probably more attracted to want to work with me whenever the time is right. And it might not be today, it might be a year from now. But if we're salespeople and we see this as a long game, we're planting seeds, like we're gardeners everywhere, planting these seeds. And like over time, the flowers are going to start to bloom, and you got to give it some time. But it truly does work. And it truly does help you, break away from just being a salesperson to being more of like a trusted advisor with people.
Love that. And you can do that with CTAs that aren't all meeting based, right? It's just more about interest, right? Mm-hmm. Not even mentioning interest in your solution, even. It could even be in the solution and what you gave them, right? It'd be like, hey, here are 10 LinkedIn tips that I think you could use. Do you find this interesting? Mm-hmm. Right. So you're just trying to get a little bit more understanding into what's going on in their mind and start a conversation. Now, Tom, I know you had another example here. And this one is you use for the customers, correct?
Yeah. So this is just an example one. You'll see this is to Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, who I did not actually send this email. This is just like a draft. But so this is pretty much like what I might say to someone like Satya, if he were to join a new company, is like, hey, congrats on the gig. I might say, I might make a reference to his work. Hey, I know we did some work when you were working over at Gong, and then get into, hey, curious to see if you're evaluating the team's outbound strategy. Here's what I'm doing with folks. And then I do interest-based call to actions if I am trying to, book a meeting or like get to a next step. So like interested in a conversation or open to a call sometime, something like that is how I would close it out.
Love it. It really just honing in on the fact that you guys do know each other in some capacity, right? And then that interest-based CTA to really wrap it all up all together. Now, we have one more example here, and that has to do with the cold outbound email. Can you tell me about this one?
Yep. So this is what I would do if, this is where the bulk of your outreach is probably going to come from, right? It's going to be cold. And so the way that I do this is that 80% of the email can be specific just to the persona. So all VPs of sales, I might hit them up and say, this is the problem that they're having, right? They're struggling struggling to find the time to coach their team to build pipeline. Cool. Here's what I'm doing. I'm helping people, with the tactics that help me hit me President's Club at Gong, so on and so forth. The part that I personalize will be the first sentence and the subject line, where in this case, this is from a sequence for people. I do a prospecting boot camp where reps learn how to build prospecting, build pipeline, and I coach them, kind of like one-on-one or in a group setting. And then, if one rep at Salesforce does that, I might try to reach out to a sales leader and say, hey, a couple reps went through my training. Would be interested if you want to talk about like having some team training or open to that. So I personalize the first sentence to what's my reason for reaching out. And then I get into like, what's the problem that I help solve? How do I solve it? And then a call to action. And that's like the general kind of thought process as to where I'm coming at with my cold emails.
This is great. Now, how many words would you say this is?
I didn't count on this one, but I would say, generally speaking, I'm trying to keep it like 50 to 75.
Keep it nice, short, and sweet. Now, I saw someone here in the chat, Shravan, you put your cold email that you normally send out in the chat. And one thing I would say is try to keep it short and sweet, around that 75 word mark. You don't want to keep it too long. As you can see here with Tom's example, very personalized and short and sweet and to the point. People have very short attention spans nowadays. So the shorter the email, the better. You can actually hook your prospect a lot quicker. Now, how about when it comes to building a sequence? What are some do's and don'ts? You mentioned some of these in the pre-call. Can you break them down for me?
Yep. So the do's. So the beauty of the sales sequence is that it helps you stay organized, right? You don't want it to do all the work for you and get sloppy. But imagine trying to reach out to 25 new people every single day. Reach out to all of those people, 10 times over 20 days and keep track of all that. That if you had to do that in a Google sheet, that would be insanity. That would be almost impossible. That's what I was tried to do in like 2015 when I was selling before I had a sales sequence tool. But so you want to use this to stay organized. You want to know like, when should I be emailing people? When should I be calling them? Who am I booking meetings with? Things like that. I call what we just talked about the problem statement method, right? So I'm focusing on a problem that my prospect might have. And I want to find out, do they have that problem? Do they not? If they do, cool. Let's have a call. If not, cool. Not a good use of both of our times. I'm going to move on to someone else. We talked about multiple vehicles. So trying to get them in different ways, call, email, LinkedIn, direct mail, video, whatever you got to do. And then be creative. Even if your leader gives you some content to use, some emails to write, get creative, like try to take chances, try to do a 10-word email. Try to do a 100-word email. Try a video. Try, a LinkedIn audio message. Like try some weird stuff and see what works. And that's the best way to like treat it like you're a scientist, making experiments and seeing what works. The don'ts, use it to batch and blast. Please don't send 1,000 or 5,000 emails at once that are all the exact same email. Just trust me, it's not going to work. Don't skip tasks. So if you have too many contacts, it's very tempting to skip all of your phone calls, to skip your personalization on your emails, to skip your, maybe direct mail touch or a video email. You built the sequence for a reason. You built it strategically. And so make sure to, do your best to not be lazy and focus on, making sure you do every single task. And that's the way that you're going to have the most success.
Wow. This is very true. And that goes hand in hand with, you can't be lazy. You just got to pretty much culminate the strength and do it. You got to just do it, right? Take the Nike logo to heart. Yeah. Do everything that's in your sequence because it's there for a reason. Now, before we get into Q&A, I want to let you guys know, if you love this show, we have another great one for you all tomorrow at 12 p.m. We're going to be showing you all how to master discovery calls with effective questions. If you're building out these sequences, you're going to get someone on the phone. When you get them on the phone, you're going to have proper discovery. So we're going to go over all of this and more at 12 p.m. tomorrow. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Be sure to check it out. So, Tom, it seems that our show has got the attention of a lot of people in our audience, and they got some questions because my Q&A has been blowing up. So let's get into it really quickly. We have a couple people here. Now, one that I saw that was pretty popular is in the chat, actually. Now, let me bring it up here. Right here. Lauren asks, what if you have a marketing team that sends nurture emails as well with similar info as what you do in sales? Is it better for it to come from us or from marketing?
Yeah, good question. I would consider anything that marketing does for you as just like a cherry on top as a sales professional, right? At the end of the day, it's you are the first line of, attention to the customer. You're the person trying to book a meeting. Now, marketing might be putting out some content. Maybe they're doing events. Maybe they have case studies, things like that. But it's your job to be personal. It's your job to, to try to build that relationship with folks and earn their trust. And so I would try to use different types of content. But if there's a great piece of content marketing puts out, I wouldn't worry about, using the same message from time to time, but I would try to find your own that's specific to the industry if you can. So if I was selling to a CIO, I might find some technical content from, Gartner or Forrester, or like some industry report. Whereas your marketing team's probably putting together like case studies about why your company's so good and, what you guys do that's better than the competition and things like that. I think you earn more trust by sharing industry level knowledge rather than like, this is why our company is great. So, if marketing helps you book meetings, that's great. But I think you got to also take it into your own hands to share some other useful info.
That's a great point, Tom. And Rolando asked a similar question because he was piggybacking off of Lauren. And when it comes to that voicemail portion, you just want to tell them that you sent them an email. The whole point is to be a human, right? Show them that you're the one reaching out and you're the one trying to get their attention, right? It becomes a lot more personal and definitely not something marketing would do. So it sets you apart. Mm-hmm. Now, we have another Q&A here. An anonymous attendee says, when you say you have a manual email in your sequence, is it personalized or just manually triggered?
Technically, a manual email means that it is just manually triggered. I have to hit send. But the reason why is because there's some sort of personalization that I put in. So if there's an automated email, it might be a bump email like, hey, Adrian, bumping this email up so that you can see it. It might be a later touch in a sequence. But when I write manual email, it's because I'm personalizing that first sentence most likely. The rest of the email is probably already pre-written. I might tweak up a few things depending on if I see it in my research and want to customize it even more. But I want to make sure I personalize that first part to get someone's attention, and then I send it through that way.
Amazing. That is a fantastic viewpoint. You want to also be sure that if you're trying to do a lot of different points of personalization, fill that in as like as a parentheses in your sequence. Say, this is where I'm going to input the personalization. Make it something that would work. That way you can quickly run through those manual emails and include that piece of personalization with your research. So love to see this. Tom, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, best place would be on LinkedIn. So it's my name, Tom Alemo, on LinkedIn. And if you think any of the stuff is helpful, shoot me a DM, add me. And like I said, I do consistently, I do boot camps that help SDRs and AEs book more pipelines. So DM me, let me know what the part that was the best, that was most helpful. And if there's anything I can do to help you in your career, let me know, and I'm down to help you out.
Love to see it. Now, thank you so much for attending this conversation, Tom. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much to our audience for being so engaging. This is great to see you guys blowing up the chat. As always, we'll have you here on the next one. It will be at 12 p.m. tomorrow. Be sure to sign up for that and take care of those sequences. Don't be lazy. Fill it up. Do 15 5x5s, do that 5x5 separate sequences. So that way you fit them into the right categories. And lastly, don't forget the personalization. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been fantastic. And of course, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.